If you live anywhere in Los Angeles, you know that wildfire isn't some distant threat. It's a seasonal reality. It's part of life here. So today, we're going to break down a really critical tool for defending your home, the fuel modification plan. Let's dive in.
Just let that sink in for a minute. With our dry climate and the way our neighborhoods press right up against wild open spaces, well, what's growing around your house can be either a shield or a fuse. This isn't just about having a pretty garden. This is about survival. The choices you make in your own yard are literally your first line of defense, long before the fire department can even get there.
So, how do we make sure our landscape is an asset and not a liability? Well, the answer is a proactive strategy, a literal blueprint for safety, called a fuel modification plan, or FMP for short.
You know, the core idea behind an FMP is actually pretty simple, but it is so powerful. It's all about strategically removing the fuel, and by fuel we mean all that flammable stuff, the plants and materials, from around your home. What this does is create something called a defensible space. It's designed to slow a fire way down, and crucially, give firefighters a safe zone to work in.
Okay, so this brings us to a really big question. Is this just a good idea? Something you should think about? Or is it something you have to do? Well, the answer really depends on where you live and what you're planning to build.
So you'll want to pay close attention here, especially if you fall into one of these buckets. If you're building a brand new home or doing a major remodel in an area that's officially designated as a very high fire hazard severity zone, then yeah, an FMP is almost certainly going to be mandatory. It also applies to big public projects, like schools or parks, and sometimes it's even a requirement from your local homeowners association.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this actually works. An FMP isn't just about clearing a bunch of land. Nope, it's a really sophisticated, layered defense system. Let's take a look at how this is built out from your home in very distinct zones. This table lays out the strategy perfectly. I want you to think of it like concentric circles of safety rippling out from your house. Zone A, that's the 30 feet right up against your home, is the most critical. Here, you want the absolute bare minimum of vegetation, and what you do have should be non-flammable, like gravel or irrigated ground cover. Then, as you move out to Zone B, you can have more plants, but they have to be thinned out and spaced properly to prevent what are called fuel ladders. That's where a fire can climb from low brush right up into the taller trees. And finally, you get to Zone C, which is all about thinning out the native landscape just enough to reduce the overall fuel load.
Okay, so you've got your zones mapped out, but what do you actually put in them? This is where your inner gardener has to meet some real fire science. Let's look at the toolkit for creating what we call a fire-wise garden.
Not all plants are created equal when it comes to fire. The best ones, the safest ones, all share these traits. They hold a lot of water in their leaves, they don't shed a ton of dry, dead material that can act as kindling, and they aren't full of flammable oils, like the sticky resin in a pine tree. And hey, a good, deep root system is a huge bonus for holding hillsides together.
This slide gives us some fantastic, clear-cut examples. Plants like rock rose are great choices, mostly because they hold on to so much moisture. But on the flip side, you've got things like eucalyptus and cypress, which are notoriously flammable because of their oily resins and all the dry debris they're constantly dropping. Those are ones you want to avoid near your house. The big takeaway here is you want to choose plants that resist catching fire, not ones that encourage it. Now, a fire-wise landscape is not a one-and-done kind of project. It needs consistent upkeep. But the game plan is pretty simple, just 3 steps. First, keep your plants hydrated with smart irrigation. Second, use the right kind of mulch to hold that moisture in the soil. And third, this is maybe the most important, be absolutely relentless about clearing away dead leaves and branches. All that debris is basically a fire's favorite snack, just waiting for a spark.
So now we get to the bottom line. What's the real impact of all this work? And what are the challenges? Let's talk about the payoff, the price, and the protection that you're really buying into.
The benefits are just immense. A well-executed FMP literally acts as a brake on an advancing wildfire. It gives firefighters that defensible space they so desperately need to make a stand and protect your property. It saves lives, it reduces damage, and when you do it right, it can even help maintain the ecological balance by preventing those huge catastrophic fires and the soil erosion that follows. But let's be realistic here, it's not without its challenges. Creating and maintaining this kind of landscape costs money, for sure, and it takes a lot of work. There's also this really delicate balance you have to strike. If you clear out too much vegetation, you can actually create a whole new problem with erosion. So it's all about being smart, not just aggressive with the clearing. So we'll end on this thought. A fuel modification plan really transforms your property from being a potential victim into an active defender. It is an investment in resilience, in safety, and frankly, in your own peace of mind. The question isn't if the next fire will come, but when. And what will your landscape do when it finally arrives?